My mom told me I had 2 weeks to pack my bags because my pregnant sister needed my house more than I did. The house my dad left me, the one I helped him fix, clean, and live in until the day he died. Hi, I'm Rachel. And I thought grief would be the hardest part after losing my father. I was wrong, because when the lies started spreading online and my name was dragged through the dirt, I almost stayed silent. Almost. But then I found something my dad left behind, a voice recording he made just for me. If you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace or keeping your dignity, what would you have done? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. I buried my father on a cold October morning and unearthed the family I thought I'd left behind. The cemetery in Tacoma was quiet except for the sound of shoes pressing into damp earth and the rustle of old leaves caught in the breeze. I stood near the modest gray urn, my fingers gently tracing the fabric of my father's scarf wrapped around my neck. It still held the faint scent of his aftershave, bay rum and cedar, the kind he always joked made him smell like an old-school gentleman. Ethan stood beside me, his hand close but not quite touching mine, giving me space. Dad once told me, "Some people only come around when there's something to gain. Don't mistake their timing for love." Those words echoed louder than any of the funeral prayers. I hadn't seen my mother or my sister in 6 years, maybe more. So when I saw Linda and Chloe step out of their rented silver sedan, I almost didn't recognize them at first, until my stomach knotted the way it always used to when I heard Linda's heels clicking down the hallway when I was a child. Linda wore a long navy coat that looked expensive and unnecessary. She arrived late, of course. She glanced around, then walked directly to the front without acknowledging anyone. Her first words, loud enough to make Ethan raise an eyebrow, were, "These flowers look cheap. He always hated chrysanthemums." Not a hello, not even a nod to me. Chloe floated in behind her, wearing black with pearls and oversized sunglasses, as though auditioning for a daytime drama. Her steps were calculated, and her sobs, yes, actual sobs, sounded more rehearsed than real. I'd seen her cry for real once, when Dad cut off her credit card in college. That had been genuine. This question mark, this was theater. She stepped toward me and wrapped her arms around me abruptly. "Rach," she whispered, "we need to talk about the house." I pulled away slightly, enough to maintain politeness but not warmth. "Now's not the time, Chloe." Her perfume lingered on my jacket as she moved away, sweet, cloying, like something trying too hard to be young. The minister spoke briefly. A few family friends nodded along. My father had always said he didn't want anything fancy. "Burn me, bury me, but don't bore them," he once joked. I tried to smile at the memory but couldn't hold it. Not with Linda standing near the urn with her arms crossed like she was waiting for a taxi. I glanced at Ethan. He gave me a tiny smile and squeezed my elbow. Just enough to say, "I'm here." As the service ended, people began drifting off, some to their cars, others to comfort me. Linda didn't approach me directly. Instead, she made a point of speaking to 2 of Dad's former coworkers, praising herself for raising the kids mostly on her own and being gracious despite the divorce. I felt Ethan stiffen beside me when he heard her. Chloe walked over again, dabbed her perfectly dry cheeks with a tissue, and said, "It's sad, but at least now maybe things can get settled." She looked past me into the distance like she was envisioning furniture layouts. I stayed silent. Ethan leaned in as she walked away. "She just said something to your uncle. I think it was, 'Can't believe she gets everything.'" I sighed, low and tired. Of course she did. I turned back to the urn. I took out a small photograph from my coat pocket, a picture of me and Dad at a Mariners game, sunburnt and smiling. I slipped it inside the bouquet by the urn and whispered, "Thank you for everything." Just as we were about to leave, Linda approached me with that slow, deliberate walk that used to make me brace as a teenager. "So," she began, brushing invisible lint from her coat sleeve, "where's the key to the house?" I blinked. "What?" "The house," she said, as if speaking to someone hard of hearing. "You're staying in it for now, I assume. But eventually we'll need to figure out how to divide things fairly. Chloe's going to need space, and with the baby coming, it just makes sense." My body went cold, but my face stayed neutral. I'd learned to school my features early in life. "I'll be in touch," I said, starting to turn away. She smiled then, not warm, not kind. It was the kind of smile people give before they take something. "We'll stop by next week," she said sweetly. "Just make sure it's clean." I didn't reply. I just watched her walk back toward Chloe, who was already texting on her phone, oblivious or indifferent. Ethan came up beside me, his expression unreadable. "They're not done," he said quietly. I nodded. "Neither am I. Dad didn't just leave me a house. He left a firewall." A week after the funeral, I sat in a chair that felt too stiff in a room that felt too warm. Mr. Halverson's office hadn't changed in the 20 years since I first walked in as a teenager with my father. Same wood paneling, same ticking wall clock, same leather chairs that creaked when you shifted your weight. He had a stack of case files near his desk, 2 mugs of coffee, one of which he'd forgotten he'd already poured, and a large manila envelope marked with my name in firm black ink. Ethan sat beside me, hands folded in his lap. His presence was steady, like a lighthouse I didn't realize I needed. He didn't try to comfort me with words, and I was grateful for that. I didn't want comfort. I wanted clarity. Mr. Halverson adjusted his glasses and cleared his throat, his voice soft and deliberate. "Rachel, I know this isn't easy, but your father was a very prepared man. He wanted this handled promptly." "I know," I said, voice quiet. "That was just him." He gave me a nod of agreement. "He also wanted you to hear everything, not just read it." From a drawer, he retrieved a slim flash drive and plugged it into a small, battered laptop. The screen flickered to life, and then there he was, Dad. On screen, he sat at his old office desk, wearing that familiar gray cardigan he never replaced. His hair looked thinner than I remembered, and his smile didn't quite reach his eyes, but his voice was strong. "Hey, Rach," he began, his tone casual but careful. "If you're seeing this, it means I've finally kicked the bucket." I laughed, involuntarily, a short, soft laugh that caught in my throat. "I've tried to make this as simple as possible. I don't want a bunch of arguing, and I don't want guilt getting in the way of what's right. So here's what I've decided." The screen faded to black as Halverson took over. "In the official will," he said, unfolding the document slowly, "your father leaves you the family home, the entirety of his savings and retirement accounts, and controlling interest in Martin Draftworks, LLC. My heart clenched. I had worked with Dad in that small shop for over a decade. I knew every inch of that business, every supplier, every delay, every late-night design tweak. It wasn't just a company. It was us. Halverson continued. To Chloe Martin, he leaves the 2010 Nissan Altima and a sum of $10,000, which is to be disbursed in quarterly payments of $2,500. He looked up briefly, his expression unreadable. To Linda Martin, he leaves $1 and 2 framed photographs, items she specifically requested during their divorce proceedings. Silence settled over the room. It wasn't triumph I felt. It wasn't even relief. It was weight. A strange, invisible weight pressing against my chest. Halverson gently turned the laptop back toward me. There's one more part. He wanted you to see this privately. The screen returned, and Dad leaned forward this time, his face closer to the camera. You earned this, Rachel. Not just because you're my daughter, but because you showed up. You showed up when it mattered, and when no one else did. Don't let guilt make decisions for you. Not from them. Not even from me. You keep what's yours, and you protect it. My eyes stung, but I didn't cry. Not fully. A few tears welled up and clung stubbornly to my lower lashes, but I blinked them back. Ethan placed his hand gently on my knee. I covered it with mine. Halverson handed me the manila envelope. In here are the formal documents: deed transfers, account access, legal protections, and this. He produced a small cream-colored envelope. It had my name written on it in Dad's blocky handwriting, the kind he always used when labeling holiday lights or freezer containers. I hesitated before opening it. The flap tore slowly, deliberately. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper, folded twice. Rachel, it began, I've tried to raise you the best I knew how, which wasn't always enough. I know I failed in some ways, and for those, I'm sorry. But this, what I'm leaving you, it's not a prize. It's a reminder. A reminder that you are not small. You are not selfish, and you are not responsible for the emptiness others carry in themselves. You are responsible for what you build. And this house, this life, this future, it's yours to build freely. Real family doesn't make demands. They make space. Protect what's yours, even from them. I folded the letter back up with careful fingers. My throat felt tight. For a long moment, none of us spoke. The only sound in the room was the quiet hum of the old laptop fan and the ticking clock above the door. Halverson finally stood. He respected you, Rachel, a great deal, and he trusted you. I nodded, but I couldn't speak. My mouth opened, then closed. I reached for my bag, slid the envelope inside, and stood slowly. Ethan offered me his arm. You okay? He whispered. I took a breath. Getting there. We stepped out of the office into the crisp fall air. It had rained earlier, and the pavement was still damp. A few leaves clung to the windshield of our car. I stared at them for a moment before getting in. That evening, I sat in my bedroom, staring out at the backyard Dad had tended for decades. The house felt different now. He wasn't just gone. He'd made sure it wouldn't be taken from me. I thought that might bring peace. But peace has a strange way of arriving with a new kind of fear. At 8:43 p.m., my phone buzzed with a message. Chloe. Mom says we're coming over tomorrow. Hope you left the guest room open. I stared at it for a long while. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my nightstand drawer, pulled out Dad's scarf, and wrapped it around my shoulders. Then I grabbed a notepad and wrote just 3 words in bold capital letters at the top of a blank page. I won't move. They didn't knock. They marched in like they still had a key, and like they owned the lock, too. It was just after 2 in the afternoon when the front door creaked open. No ring of the bell, no knock, no call ahead. Just the sharp push of the handle, the familiar squeak of the hinges, and the click of heels against the hardwood floor. Ethan and I had just finished putting away the dishes from lunch. I'd made grilled cheese, simple comfort food, and we were lingering in the quiet that often follows meals shared in peace. That peace broke like glass. Linda entered first, her purse slung tightly over her shoulder, followed closely by Chloe, whose cheeks were flushed with excitement. She was wearing a loose sweater, hand resting on her midsection like a queen gesturing to a throne. Her eyes moved over the living room as if she were scouting it for a magazine shoot. I stood frozen for half a second, unsure whether to speak or simply leave the room. They didn't look at me. Not yet. Chloe walked through like a realtor giving herself a tour. She opened the hallway closet, peeked inside the guest bathroom, and then walked straight toward the back den, nodding as she went. "Perfect for the nursery," she chirped. "So much light. This'll be so good for the baby's development." Linda made her way to the couch and sat like it had been waiting for her, legs crossed, spine straight, like royalty. Then she snapped her fingers. Sharp. Loud. "Still no tea service?" she said dryly, not even glancing in my direction. "What's a home without basic manners?" Ethan stood next to me, stiff and silent. His eyes darted between me and them, gauging the temperature of the room. I wasn't boiling yet, but the pot was beginning to bubble. I inhaled through my nose. "You let yourselves in." Linda's voice turned sugary. "Well, you didn't answer our texts, and I didn't want Chloe getting too tired standing outside. You know how pregnancy can be." She glanced around with a faux smile. "Besides, we're family." I said nothing. Chloe reappeared, beaming, hands lightly pressed to her stomach. "Mommy, I love the kitchen. It's just what we need." She walked over and hugged Linda from behind like a child who just won a contest. "This was your father's house," Linda said, now locking eyes with me. "But that chapter's closed, Rachel. And as the eldest, I would have expected you to understand duty." She smoothed her pants and crossed her legs the other way. "Now that your father's gone, it's time you did your part." "What does that mean exactly?" I asked, even though I already knew. Linda's smile never reached her eyes. "You can move out, or stay in one room and help with bills. Chloe needs the space. A baby changes everything." Ethan's body tensed next to mine. I could feel his silence vibrating. "She needs a nursery, a safe place, support," Linda continued. "And you, well, you've had your time. You're single, childless. It only makes sense." Chloe added quickly, "And it's not like you even use the second bedroom." I peeked. "It's empty." I stepped forward, my voice lower than I expected. "You had no right to come in." Linda tilted her head. "Don't be dramatic." "This isn't yours," I said, louder now. "This was Dad's home, and now it's mine." "Oh, sweetheart," Linda said with a slow blink. "Let's not pretend this was earned. He just left it to you. That doesn't mean you get to keep it all to yourself. Chloe is family. She needs this more than you do." I stared at them, at Chloe's smug grin, at Linda's calculated gaze. And for the first time in years, I didn't shrink back. I didn't explain myself. I didn't try to keep the peace. I stood straighter. "No," I said. Linda's eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" "No," I repeated. "I'm not moving. I'm not giving you this house. You didn't want it when Dad was alive. You never came to visit. You never called. And Chloe, she barely spoke to him." Chloe gasped like I'd slapped her. "That's not fair. I was grieving in my own way." "You were shopping," I shot back. "While he was in the hospital, you were at brunch." Linda stood now. "Enough. I am your mother. And I am telling you that this house is going to Chloe. You can sign it over or you can stay and pay rent. But if you keep acting like a selfish little—" "Selfish?" My voice trembled, not from fear but fury. "You abandoned Dad. You told him he deserved cancer, and now you think you can waltz in and take everything he gave me?" Linda's lips curled. "Then consider this your formal eviction, unless you prefer we settle this messier." The room held its breath. Beside me, Ethan raised his phone, slowly, deliberately. A soft click. Then the red circle appeared on screen. Linda saw it. Her mouth opened, but no words came. "I suggest," Ethan said calmly, "you both leave. Now." "You think that video will matter?" Chloe spat. "No one will care. She's just bitter. She's always been bitter." I looked at her and saw her, not the sister I once tried to protect, not the girl who used to steal my sweaters and beg me to do her hair. I saw a woman who thought the world owed her because someone once told her she was special. "This is my home," I said, voice even. "You are not welcome here." Linda's face twisted. "You'll regret this." "Maybe," I said, "but not today." Chloe burst into tears as she turned, sobbing dramatically as she fled to the door. Linda followed, jaw clenched, heels clicking with rage. When the door slammed shut behind them, I felt the silence swell, big, heavy, holy. Ethan set the phone down and looked at me. "That was something." I exhaled slowly, every breath like a stone I'd been holding in for years. "She's going to retaliate," I said, not as a warning, just a truth. "Probably," he said, "but we're not scared of her anymore." I nodded, walked over to the living room window and watched them drive away. Dad's voice echoed in my mind. "She can't take what she didn't build." No, she couldn't. But she'd try. The morning after I stood my ground, my phone was blowing up and I wasn't the one setting fires. At first, I thought the buzzing was just a group chat. A casual family thread, maybe a few work emails stacked up. But as I opened my eyes and reached for the screen, the sheer number of notifications made my stomach drop. Missed calls, text messages from names I hadn't seen in years. Dozens of them. The first message I read hit like a slap across the face. "Rachel, did you really kick your pregnant sister out of your father's house?" Another one seconds later. "You should be ashamed. Family doesn't do that to family." I sat up in bed. Ethan was still asleep beside me, breathing softly. The room was dim, only a sliver of early March light peeking through the curtains. But on that screen, in my palm, it was blazing. I opened Facebook, and there it was, a post from Chloe. Public a photo of her, sitting on my porch steps, head down, one hand gently cradling her stomach like a dramatic promo for a made-for-TV movie. The caption read, "Family is supposed to protect you, not evict you while you're carrying their niece. All I asked was for a safe place for my baby. But I guess some people only care about what's written in a will." Homeless and pregnant. Sister, in name only. Just below it, another post. Linda's this time. "After all these years, I never thought my own daughter would betray her bloodline. My late ex-husband's house was meant to be a legacy, but greed is a poison. She manipulated him when he was ill. Now, my youngest and I are left with nothing but each other. We'll survive, but the truth will come out. It always does." They both tagged me, and they made sure it was public. I sat frozen for a full minute. My mouth was dry, and my heart thudded in my ears. The comments were already flooding in. "This is disgusting." "She must have lied to the lawyer." "I hope she's happy, ripping a baby away from their family before it's even born." Dozens of shares, likes, angry reacts, comments from relatives I hadn't spoken to in over a decade, people who had no idea what had actually happened, people who didn't bother to ask. I finally whispered, "Ethan." He stirred. I passed him the phone in silence. He scrolled slowly, eyebrows tightening. "What the hell is this?" "My morning," I said softly, swinging my legs off the bed. We went downstairs in silence. The kitchen still smelled faintly of yesterday's cinnamon coffee, but this morning had no sweetness in it, only bitterness rising like steam. Ethan set the kettle on the stove and turned to me. They made it public. They dragged you. Chloe even used hashtags. I know. I opened my laptop, fingers already trembling as I pulled up the posts. I took screenshots. Every image, every comment, every tag. I knew better than to wait. Posts like these could be deleted, edited, reworded, but the damage would still be done. By the time I reached Aunt Marianne's comment, "This is not what your father would have wanted," my hands had stopped shaking. The sadness hardened into something sharper. I grabbed my phone and called Aunt Carol. She answered on the second ring. "Rachel, I assume you've seen it." "I have," she said gently. "And I also know the truth." I closed my eyes for a beat. Why would they do this? Because that's what manipulators do when the facts aren't in their favor. They rewrite the narrative. Loudly, publicly. They don't need it to be true. They just need it to be shared enough times that people believe it. They're winning the optics war. For now, Carol said. But the people who matter will see through it. And the people who don't never mattered much to begin with. "I can't just let them do this," I said. "Then don't." It was that simple. A choice. Not to react emotionally, but to respond intentionally. I ended the call and went back to the kitchen. Ethan was already halfway through a document on his laptop. "You've got everything, right? The video, the will, the letter, all of it. Good. Then let's fight facts with facts." We spent the next 2 hours gathering everything. Screenshots of their posts, dated proof of the inheritance, digital copies of Dad's final messages, including the video and letter. I even opened the deed and circled my name in red ink, like I was grading a lie. When we were done, I opened a message to both Linda and Chloe. My thumbs hovered above the keyboard for a moment, and then I wrote, "You have 48 hours to remove all false and defamatory posts and issue a public correction. If you fail to do so, I will proceed with legal action. I have documentation, witnesses, and records that confirm your statements are not only false, but intentionally harmful. This isn't a threat. It's a statement of consequence. You may know how to create drama. I know how to end it, with the truth." I read it 3 times, checked for tone, and hit send. Then I set my phone down and waited. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Then finally, a message appeared from Linda. "Do it, and you'll regret it. I know how to play this game better than you." I stared at the words, read them aloud to Ethan, and then sat back. She thought this was a game. But I wasn't playing anymore. I didn't go to war. I simply handed them the mirror, and they cracked it themselves. The day we met Halverson again, the sky was low and gray, the kind that made even bright spring feel like winter's ghost still lingered. Ethan and I arrived early, and the receptionist offered us instant coffee from a machine that hissed like a tired radiator. We declined. I wasn't in the mood for anything warm. I had come to be cold and clear. Halverson's office looked more worn than I remembered it from earlier in the month. Or maybe I just noticed the little things more now. The ring stain on the corner of his desk. The copy machine that groaned every time it came to life. The way he gently folded his reading glasses before he spoke. But when he looked up at me with calm certainty, the rest faded. "I've drafted a formal cease and desist," he said, sliding a packet of neatly stapled documents toward me. "It includes everything we discussed. The digital timestamps, the video from your father, the screenshots of public defamation. We also reference the notarized will and the no contest clause. It's airtight, Rachel." I exhaled slowly. "Will this be enough?" He smiled softly. "Truth usually is. Eventually." Ethan leaned forward slightly. "Do you expect them to fight it?" "They might try. Halverson said. "But they won't win." It took less than 3 hours for the letter to reach Linda's inbox. I imagined her opening it, eyes scanning quickly, heart tightening. Not from fear of being wrong, just from being cornered. The first reply came 6 hours later. It wasn't a formal statement. It was a public post. Chloe, a blurry selfie, eyes red, lips pouty, head resting on a pillow with a caption that read, "Sometimes grief makes you act in ways you're not proud of. I love my sister. We've had our differences, but she never kicked me out. I just misunderstood the situation. That's all. Please respect our privacy." It was pathetic, but it was something. The original post disappeared shortly after. Linda's post took a little longer. By midnight, both had vanished from public view, as if trying to rewrite history with the delete button. But I had the proof. More importantly, so did Halverson. Then, around 9 a.m. the next morning, Linda posted again. Just a few lines. "Sometimes we let grief cloud our judgment. Apologies for any confusion caused. Moving forward with peace." No mention of my name. No tag. No real remorse. But it didn't matter, because the silence that followed, their silence, was louder than all the shouting before, and people noticed. I started getting messages from cousins I barely knew. "Hey, sorry for jumping to conclusions. I didn't know everything that happened. That wasn't fair to you. I deleted my comment. Hope you're okay." Even Aunt Marianne messaged me. Just 3 words. "I was wrong." I didn't reply. I didn't need to, because for once, I wasn't chasing their approval. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I had stood still, and the truth had moved through them like wind through sand. Later that week, Aunt Carol tagged me in a photo. It was a picture of me and Dad from years ago, me in a baseball cap, laughing, holding 2 ice cream cones. He behind me with one hand on my shoulder, eyes squinting with pride. Her caption read, "The truth took its time, but it came through. Proud of you, Rach." I didn't cry. Not really. But I stared at that photo for a long time. I realized then that sometimes justice isn't loud. It doesn't come with applause or headlines. Sometimes it's quiet. A slow rebalancing. A sigh of relief in a room where no one clapped. It was the same night that I got the message from Chloe. "Mom wants to come by. One last time. To talk." I stared at it for almost 10 minutes. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I even typed a few words, then deleted them. I didn't answer. Instead, I walked up to the attic. I hadn't been up there in weeks, not since the funeral. It smelled of cedar and dust and time. I pulled the chain on the overhead bulb, and it flickered to life like a reluctant memory. There, in the corner, under an old army blanket, was a box. It was labeled in my father's handwriting, "Rachel, if things go bad." I sat on the wooden floor, legs crossed, heart somewhere between curiosity and dread. Inside the box were a few envelopes, some newspaper clippings, a folded letter, and an old black voice recorder. I turned it over in my hands, and sure enough, there was a note taped to the back. "Play this when you don't know what to do." I didn't press play. Not yet. I just held it, pressing it against my chest, like maybe through it, I could still feel his heartbeat. And for the first time in weeks, I felt still. Not because everything was solved, but because I had stopped running. They had tried to burn me down. But the truth had held like steel. I didn't win a house. I kept a promise. By July, the backyard was in full bloom. The rose bushes Dad planted years ago had grown wild with color, climbing gently over the faded wooden fence. The grass had patches, sure, but it was the kind of imperfect that made the place feel lived in, real. I had just finished arranging folding chairs on the patio, the scent of grilled peaches drifting from the open kitchen window. I hadn't pressed play on the recorder until the week after Linda and Chloe went silent. I'd let it sit on my dresser for days, then on the windowsill, then on the edge of the nightstand, always nearby but untouched. When I finally did press play, I was sitting on the porch, barefoot, holding a mug of coffee I never intended to finish. There was a brief crackle of static, and then his voice. "Hey, Rach. If you're hearing this, then yeah. Things probably got messy." His laugh was soft, low, like he was trying not to wake someone in the next room. I figured they would. I didn't plan it that way, but I know how people get when something permanent is suddenly up for grabs. But this house, it's not a prize, honey. It's not a trophy to be won. It's something we built together. A pause. Then, this home is yours, not just by law, but by love. Because you showed up, because you stayed, because you helped fix the leaky sink without asking, and you learned to mow the lawn in patterns when my back got bad, and because you made this place a home for me, especially in the years when I had nothing left to give. I hope you're not listening to this because things hurt, but if you are, just know, you don't owe anyone your peace, not even if they call it selfishness. I didn't cry. I just sat still. The wind picked up then, moving through the porch screens like breath. That night, I baked a peach pie, his favorite. Not because it was symbolic or poetic, just because I wanted the house to smell like him again, and for the first time in months, the kitchen felt like it belonged to someone kind. Ethan helped prep for the backyard dinner. It wasn't a big thing, just Aunt Carol, 2 friends from the shop, and one of the neighbors who used to wave at Dad every Thursday when trash day rolled around. We kept the food simple: grilled corn, pasta salad, lemonade in mason jars. I laid out paper lanterns across the railing. Someone brought an old speaker, and we played Motown for hours. It felt like a memory unfolding in real time.